How's it going, guys? Welcome to Some Notes on Style. I'm your host, Joseph. This week, we're going to be taking a look at the personal style of classic American Hollywood icon Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford, the face of Han Solo, Indiana Jones, Captain Deckard, Jack Ryan, countless other legendary film characters from the 1970s till today. He's the everyman with an edge, the rebel rouser with a heart of gold, and as a style icon, may not be the first name that comes to mind. But he certainly has cultivated a consistent niche among the icons of classic American Hollywood style. Generally, though, whenever we think of his iconic imagery, the first thoughts that come to mind tend to fall back to the roles of his iconic characters rather than the man himself. Unlike other iconic American style figures, say like James Dean, Paul Newman, or Steve McQueen, Harrison Ford's personal style never really seems to jump out at you as being something particularly memorable. But when you look a little closer in the language of classic timeless men's style, Harrison Ford's personal style really reigns supreme. Because it seems as though over the years he has cultivated his personal image by paring down his style into a handful of looks which he wears over and over again, and can do so freely because these looks are rooted by some of the most classic American staples that nearly any guy can wear, regardless of your age. It really becomes more the consistency of his style over the years, which works so well to frame him as an iconic actor, and not down to a certain decade or style. Perhaps it's this consistency of his personal style that in some ways can act as a part of his secret to success in his long-reaching and continued career in Hollywood. Maybe its secret is in the neutrality of his personal style, which helps to allow moviegoers to project into him a piece of themselves because of his relatability. So with that in mind, today we're going to take a look at 7 reoccurring elements that we can see in Harrison Ford's own personal style that nearly any guy can apply to his own wardrobe. Number 1, throw on a jacket and tie when the situation calls for it. Harrison Ford comes from a generation which took their acting profession with a degree of weight. Having started his career in the mid-60s as a contract studio actor and learning his craft from experience on the job, it seems as though Ford established his consistent professionalism with his own reputation. So throughout his entire career, we can find many examples of Ford on press tours for his projects, always keeping with the classic presentation of the formality of old Hollywood. If not fully dressed in a suit and tie, at the very least he's always wearing a shirt and jacket, always reassuring the public of his respect for the industry behind his own work, and treating his own role in the movie-making process with a sense of professional courtesy through his adherence to a more formal way of dressing by carrying on the traditions of the leading men of the past. His taste in neckwear always seems to fall in line with classic Ivy League American style, wearing primarily dark ties and light-colored shirts either in white or blue. Over the years, we've seen him in rep stripes, knit ties, and small foulards, but always maintaining a strong sense of classic style in his choice of neckwear. Rarely do we see him wearing anything that looks too specific of the decade. Even as recently as last year, when touring with his latest Indiana Jones movie, his choice of tailoring keeps a reflection of modern style without foregoing his classic taste. So perhaps we can all learn from Ford's consistency in his professional attire and his assertion of recognizing when tailored clothing is most appropriate. Number 2, blue shirts are always flattering. The more you look through images of Harrison Ford, you realize just how much this guy defaults to various shades of blues and navies. Because these colors totally work for him and his complexion, he has no need to overcomplicate the color palette of his closet. Shades of blue always speak to the classic colors of the American everyman. Blue colors work well when paired together and on top of one another, and if Ford's dressing casually and doesn't feel like putting on a full suit and tie, at least wearing a blue open-collared dress shirt keeps an iconic classic dressy look with a sense of casual ease. He'll mix in blue shirts casually as well, sometimes wearing darker and mid-blues with his navies. When he wears polo shirts either by themselves or with a jacket, they too are often rich shades of dark navy, giving an edgy, sporty kind of vibe. He also knows the trick to wear navy crewneck sweaters over his blue shirts and jeans for a nod to a preppy classic without slipping into a goofy, preppy, bright color palette. Of course, Ford's underlying reoccurring theme in wearing various shades of blue with his jeans brings us to our next point. Number 3, don't be afraid of classic denim. Ford is always sporting his classic American blue jeans. Blue jeans are probably one of the most iconic American staples in every guy's wardrobe, and Ford's jeans never stray far from the classic timeless dad jean. Never too dark or too light, the fit is always clean and straight. The wash is always consistent, never does he wear anything looking too worn or ragged, definitely no artificial distressing. His choice of jeans always seem as natural as can be. He'll wear them with t-shirts, he'll wear them with button-downs, and as a recurring staple in his wardrobe, he's especially not afraid of wearing them with denim and chambray shirts. This quintessentially American denim-on-denim look can sometimes be a bit much for some, but it really shouldn't be. The look is as iconic and classic as he is. He's always conscious of wearing various shades of denim, all very complementary to one another. And the ease with which he wears his denim on denim also helps to prevent it from looking too contrived or trying to look like some sort of cowboy costume. Occasionally we see Ford pair a denim shirt with a sport coat for a balanced, formal, casual kind of look, but generally he does not get too creative with his denim and mostly keeps it as comfortable casual wear without too much fuss. Number 4, always keep on hand a stack of classic, well-fitted, solid-colored cotton t-shirts. Of course, it helps that Ford has maintained his physique over the years, but keeping a nice rotation of fitted crewneck cotton t-shirts, usually in either white or coarse shades of blue, keeps Harrison Ford looking youthful and quintessentially American. Occasionally, from time to time, he'll wear neutrals and olives, tans, browns, and khakis, generally somewhat of a military surplus kind of palette. Of course, if we go way back, we can see him occasionally in a brightly colored t-shirt, or even recently, we would sometimes see him wearing a novelty logo t-shirt with some kind of graphic for fun. Throughout the 90s, he would sometimes wear his tees under his sport coat, as this was becoming more and more fashionable through that decade. But similar to his jeans, for the most part, he wears his t-shirts as a clear delineation of a casual style staple, and doesn't ever get too fussy with his t-shirts. You never see Ford rocking an oversized, squared off, or skinny t-shirt. There is always a consistency to the fits he chooses, which helps keep them timeless. Number 5, you can wear your favorite flannels for years. Another classic weekend casual staple and a definitive American icon would be the plaid flannel shirt. It instantly evokes a rugged outdoorsy masculinity, not to mention they are always comfortable as hell, and even more so if you keep them knocking around for a long time. His flannels always do seem to be very well worn, and sometimes as if he's worn the same flannels for years. But this iconic weekend wear staple also speaks to his love of the outdoors and several of his hobbies, including maintaining his own airplanes. Of course, early in his career, prior to acting in Star Wars, Ford spent several years working as a self-taught carpenter. The flannel shirt workwear language seems to suit his personality quite well, so they can be worn with ease. And Ford never seems to try to mix metaphors of casual and formal wear, much like his t-shirts and jeans. He keeps his flannels and the outfits he wears with them in a well-defined language of at home on the weekend, in which the outfits complement this sensibility rather than try to force some edgy mixing of formal and casual wear together. This clear delineation of dressing for the right occasion helps to clarify what you are doing on any given day by dressing appropriately from the start. Number 6, keep your formal wear consistent and timeless. Much like Ford's habit of keeping a sense of professionalism in his shirts and ties, when the time comes for Ford to attend a formal affair, he maintains tradition by sticking to the classic standards of formal wear. Ford comes from a generation in which formal dressing was defined by its sense of uniformity in the crowd. Black tie events often define certain social standards by keeping the tuxedo as a framing device which defines the formality of the evening. Throughout the late 80s, 90s, and 2000s, the tuxedo was constantly something which was varied and used as a testing grounds by fashion designers to try to make their mark on the iconic evening wear standard. But when you look at Ford's consistency of a classic, well-fitted, well-made, tailored tuxedo, you can't help but appreciate, like much of the rest of his wardrobe, how his adherence to a classic style really elevates the person wearing the clothing. The classic lines of the traditional tuxedo do not take the emphasis of the outfit away from Harrison Ford to the garishness of his choice of formal wear. Instead, the traditional lines of the clothing emphasize him as the focus of the outfit. Number 7, American minimalism can include tonal dressing and air ties. Finally, because Harrison Ford reigned supreme throughout much of the 80s and 90s, his personal style could not help but be slightly influenced by some of the trends of the times. Of course, especially in Hollywood during this time, one of the biggest influences was that of the European designers, namely Giorgio Armani, and in turn the American variations of luxe minimalists, such as the work of Perry Ellis or Calvin Klein. And in true classic Harrison Ford style, it seems as though what he interpreted from this influence was pared down to the simplest interpretation of this type of minimalism, which was cleaner tonal color palettes. We can see several examples of Ford's pairing of his navy suit jackets and blazers with grayed out blues in his shirting and neckwear. And as he began to age, he integrated tonal dressing with his own changing hair color, mixing his salt and pepper hair with shades of grays in his clothing, pairing neutrals with neutrals. However, this was not necessarily something new for Ford. Even as a young man, we can see several examples of him wearing navy polos with navy blazers and navy shirts with his blue jeans. Tonal outfits again acted similarly to his choice of formal wear, so that the outfits became a second focal point to his own persona. They did not compete for attention. And another iconic minimalist derivative was that of the air tie, or the shirt buttoned all the way up to the collar with a jacket and blazer. Again, this was not necessarily something new for Ford. There are numerous pictures of him rocking this look all throughout the mid-70s and 80s, keeping a degree of formality while still utilizing some of the same tricks. The air tie and jacket combo does much the same as a tonal color palette by drawing the eye upward toward the face, as the majority of the outfit's lines are concentrated around the neck, pointing upward at the center front. These types of modern elements have aged quite well. Sure, at times they might look very 80s or 90s to those who lived through the time. However, as time goes on, you cannot help but feel like Ford really did pluck the best elements of style from each decade and incorporated them into his own style in the most subtle of ways. And on top of that, when we look back at his interpretation of some of these elements, there is never any doubt that his execution still maintains a clear line of distinctively American style, even if its influence came from across the Atlantic. So, when looking at Harrison Ford's own personal style, we see many things that we can learn from and integrate into our own wardrobe, so that we too can keep a type of consistency in our own classic style. Never once have we ever seen Harrison Ford wear something too bizarre, too fashion, too Hollywood, so that if you were to see any other guy walking down the street wearing the same outfit, you'd think to yourself, who's this guy trying to be, Harrison Ford? No, what we see instead is a timelessness and a classicness within his clothing choices. Even outside his very quickly identifiable iconic film characters, the audience can still relate to Harrison Ford, regardless of what scenario his character is being placed in. Of course, with his quality of acting and his general demeanor running throughout his various roles, it always keeps the audience feeling comfortable riding along with his characters. But perhaps maintaining that relatability is a much more nuanced and considered method of acting that first meets the eye. Because we've never seen Harrison Ford wearing wigs or heavy makeup or over-the-top costumes trying to chameleon himself into some other kind of persona other than himself. But keeping that relatability through every role he's ever crafted really is perhaps a much more carefully constructed persona than we may give him credit for. By looking at the consistency of his personal style and how well he maintains a relatable American persona, the more we can all learn that being stylish does not always have to announce your presence, and that a classic menswear style can go a long way to complement you as an individual, rather than your clothing being more memorable than your personality. So that's going to wrap us up for this week, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this dive into the personal style of Harrison Ford. Let me know in the comments down below if you all are fans of his movies, his style, or which is your favorite. If you all are enjoying this type of video in which we're taking a look back at famous icons of personal style, let me know if you all have any suggestions down below of any other icons you'd like to see me explore further. As always, if you're enjoying the video, please do give me a thumbs up. If you're enjoying the channel, please do click subscribe. Once again, the channel is Some Notes on Style. I'm your host, Joseph. See you next time, guys. Bye.